Now this is going to be a bit of a preview to our upcoming series on the Normans versus Mongols. So we're just going to cover 5 things today. I'm sorry, I promised you guys that the first video would be coming out. It will be coming out before our entire podcast where we discuss the Normans versus the Mongols. But for now, I'm just going to give you a short preview. So the first interesting fact about the about the Normans is a lot of people question what made them such an effective fighting force. And the obvious answer to most people would be training. The Normans were a professional army. They frequently trained. They began training between the age of 7 to 12. They learned horse skills, archery skills, and to fight with the longsword, as well as to use the couch lance. However, most historians would agree that during this time period in the 10th and 11th centuries, there were still several other professional standing armies. The Byzantines had one of the most powerful armies on the planet. The Varangian Guard were an elite, well-trained military unit. So, training was not something that made them significantly different from the rest. However, personally, one thing that I think made them different was the fact that the way they used the horse. It's interesting to note that a lot of the plains warriors of the East would use female horses for their riding. And this is because female horses had the milk on the inside of them. They were used to carrying bigger loads because they carried the baby horses while they were growing inside of them. And if you were stranded out in the middle of somewhere, you could kill the horse and drink its milk to survive. However, the Normans used male horses. And during the First Crusade, when the battle between the Norman warriors, and Kilij Arslan, the battle took place during the mating period. So all of the Norman horses were male, and all of the Muslim horses were female. And they were all running hot, as they say. Basically, their horses were all on their cycle. And the Norman horses smashed into them. Now, of course, this didn't happen every single time they fought somebody, but throughout their battles in the East, this would happen. I would imagine this would happen frequently due to the fact that Normans had strictly male horses and that their enemies mostly used female horses. So that's interesting to note. One would be the use of the male horse. Another thing that I think made the difference was their attitude towards fighting. The Normans had a very different organization compared to their enemies when they were set up. They had a specific person who would train the boy to fight. They had teachers and tutors strictly teaching them to war. And they had this mentality to go out and war against the enemy, a very Old Testament mentality. Many people compared Tancred of Huldville, the father of the Norman brothers, who we'll be discussing in the future, to Abraham. And the interesting fact is that he had 12 sons. Another thing that I think could attribute to their success is that their calmness towards battle. A lot of people, when they were faced with bigger numbers, that would seem hopeless, they would prefer to run or seek peace terms. Oftentimes, enemies would outnumber the Normans and offer them a peace term because the enemy didn't want to fight a battle. The Normans would usually respond saying, no, we're going to fight. So just the general attitude and the leaders that they had made a huge difference. William Ironarm, in 1041, fought 3 battles, all of which were victories. And I pointed out in my podcast on Edward I that battles in the medieval period were not very common, and people would usually try to avoid them as much as possible. But William basically broke several records, not only by winning 3 battles, but also by fighting 3 battles in only 1 year. And in each and every battle, he was outnumbered.
Another key to the Norman success was the organization of their cavalry. The cavalry were separated into units of 25 to 50, and each of these units had been training with the men they were going to ride with for years and years. Now, this makes the force a whole lot more effective because of this. Let's say in the Byzantine army, you could have a group of 2,000 elite cavalrymen who've been training since they become adults, as opposed to the Normans who've been training since they were 7 years old and been training only with these men. This built 2 things that are very important in an army: trust and organization. The fact that they could move as a unit so well together to the point in which they were moving step by step together, it says a lot to the organization, and that makes a huge difference because you can have 2 groups of elite cavalry clash into each other, and even if a group is outnumbered, if they're more organized, they're more apt to win. Because the thing that makes a cavalry charge useless is the lack of formation. It's only successful if it's tightly packed together. Well, I take that back. It's not only successful, but it's most successful when it's tightly packed together and the speed doesn't change. Contrary to movie belief, you don't want to rush as fast as you possibly can. You want to gallop slowly and gradually toward the enemy, picking up momentum as you go in order to hold organization. And the Norman horses were more fit for war, therefore making them better suited for this charge, and the fact that all of them had grown up together, fighting as a fighting as a unit and a unity. You know, it's as opposed to me hitting something like this, as opposed to trying to get with my fist bound. They were bound together. You know, they were brothers of the sword and they were brothers of war. So that's number 2. We're going to move on to number 3 as to why the Normans were so effective. The third key to Norman success and victory was the fact that nobles were not exempt, and this one's very easily explained. In most countries at the time, a king, when he went on the battlefield, would have a special contingent of bodyguards that would protect him from engaging in combat with the enemy. It was least expected for him to do so, even for other leaders. However, this was not the case with Normans. When William Ironarm, first son of Tancred first showed up in Sicily, he engaged in personal combat with an emir of the enemy. This attitude showed that the Norman leaders were not only capable military men, but they were also capable of leading from the front and taking part in the victories they boasted about. It's one thing to brag if your armies won the victory. It's another thing for you to not be bragging because you actually took part in combat and defeated the enemy face to face. The nobles doing so were able to rally their troops to take on enemies, usually when they face daunting numbers. A fourth reason for Norman success can be attributed to their willingness to let bygones be bygones. Normans fought both with the Lombards and with the Byzantines in their early years when they first arrived in Sicily. They didn't have any prejudice against fighting with former enemies or even taking orders of former enemies. This helped them survive for a very long time, as most other feudal lords would not be willing to fight with someone who had previously fought against them as intensely as the war in the East was. While most nobles were willing to forgive things of their own people, it wasn't so easy for them to forgive a foreigner as well as a foreign noble. And last but most certainly not least, a big factor that I attribute to the Normans' victory throughout all their years was their eagerness for battle. As I mentioned before in my podcast on Edward I, during the medieval period, most armies would not be eager to seek out battle one against the other. They were more content to raid back and forth, attack villages, lay siege to castles, destroy livestock, and capture men and ransom them back to the enemy. The Normans, on the other hand, were the complete opposite of this. They were eager for battle, more so than most of the people they fought. Good evidence of this shows in 1041, when William Ironarm and his group of Normans were about to face a Byzantine army that outnumbered them somewhere between 6 to 9 to 1. They had about 300 to 600 troops, whereas the Byzantines had over 2,000, including a group of elite Varangian guard. The Byzantines brought terms to the Normans, even though, according to number, they should have been able to easily crush them. The Normans refused these terms, and one of their knights, a man named Hugh, stepped forward and struck the messenger's horse on the head, killing it instantly. Whether or not this part of the story is true, it nonetheless shows the attitude Normans had towards war. They weren't afraid to go into the fray while they were outnumbered, or even if they had more numbers. And another thing that attributed to their victory was, even when they did outnumber the enemy, they still approached the enemy with caution. They wouldn't automatically assume they'd be able to run over the enemy and crush them just because they had greater numbers, or because they had heavy cavalry and the enemy bore only infantry. And that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please look forward to more content coming out. Sabrina and I are eager to get that podcast about Normans versus Mongols done. We are also eventually going to give you guys part 4 of Edward I, Iron Plantagenet, and King of England. If you like the video, please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel below. Also follow us on Facebook, join the Medieval History page, and last but most certainly not least, share this video. I want to grow the channel to 1,000 subscribers at least. I am not only going to give you guys podcasts on history, I'm also going to do workout videos, personal things that I feel, a few podcasts on opinions. So look forward to the channel. Come along with me. Thanks for watching.